No child has a right to see content. No child has a right to be exposed to people themselves, people telling people to go themselves.
We had separate TikTok accounts from our main accounts where we would watch and post sad content. Eating disorder inspo. There was also how to take apart certain things to find objects to yourself.
I've seen the negative and quite frankly hateful portrayal of minority and vulnerable groups, and that's not only our Māori and our Pacifica, but that's our immigrant community and that's our women.
The last thing you want is to be the one person not on social media. You don't want to be left out of hanging out with your friends, or everyone's talking about something and you just don't get the reference. That's the worst feeling as a child.
There's a saying in te ao Māori, he a te mea nui o te ao, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing in the world? It is the people, it is the people, it is the people. So just from that aspect, social media don't do much to try and support those strong interpersonal relationships.
Kia ora and welcome to One Young Mind podcast. It's a fact that our young people live in an increasingly addictive digital world, and whilst that world can bring a lot of positives, what exactly are the risks? I'm Matilda Green, content creator, presenter and mother of 3.
And I'm Dr. Manish Deva, paediatrician. This podcast discusses mental health issues, self-harm and suicide, so please listen with care. If you or someone you love is struggling, please reach out to a professional for help. Helpline numbers can be found in the show notes of this podcast.
Kia ora, welcome to the podcast, Arden and Olivia.
Kia ora.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here today. I know it is a big deal talking about this stuff. You know, it can be quite a heavy topic, so we really appreciate your time. Arden, let's start with you. What is your relationship with social media like now?
Well, to be 100% honest, I've never had a really strong relationship with social media. I've never had a large connection to it, but I do understand what the sort of ideas around the addictive nature of social media are. I mean, I started off with Snapchat in year 10.
So what age is year 10? Is that 14?
Yeah, well, I would have been 13, so I'm
Right.
a little bit younger. But I started off with Snapchat in year 10, and that got quite addictive, you know, with the every day trying to update your streaks and make sure that you're staying on top of that. It's almost a point system that you get rewarded for. And so that was my first sort of exposure to social media. And then more recently at 16, I joined Instagram. And that again was just another really interesting experience, coming from a place that didn't really have a lot of social media in my life, to just seeing what the algorithm sort of recommends you and stuff like that, and the content that's online. It was really quite surprising and shocking to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you just tell us what a streak is on Snapchat for anyone that doesn't know?
Yeah, so basically a streak is in 24 hours, you've got to send a snap, someone's got to send you a snap back, and you repeat that every day, and every day that you do that, you get an extra point, or you get an extra day. So snap streaks can get up to, I think the longest one I had was 500 days, but people have had longer than that. And it's just an incentive for young people to go back on and engage with that platform every day and use it to gain those streaks, or to gain those points in a way.
Mm. And just interesting, how much time does that take if someone's got to keep up their streaks every day?
Well, for me, I was a bit less tech savvy, so I do everyone individually. People can do it now, where they just press all the ones all at once. But if you really want to talk about social media as connection, that's not hugely connecting, is it? If you're just, taking one photo of a black screen or of the sky or something random, and sending it, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it would. You'd be so desperate to keep the streak, you'd just be like, oh, here's a table, and send that off.
Yeah, I used to take photos outside the bus. I just used to take photos of the bus stop or a random car or something like that and send it. So yeah.
Okay.
And I can see you nodding there, Olivia.
Yeah, no, I mean, Snapchat has a new feature now where you can restore a streak, but it costs money. And that's very much a real thing. People restore them. And I know girls that have spent $5-6 on restoring one streak because it's so important. And I mean, I do have one long streak with one of my friends. It's almost 1,000 days or something. It's so long. But spending money and, it just kind of feeds into the same, this is important, when really it's not, especially if it's your own friends, people that you're seeing every day at school, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And so how about you? What's your relationship with social media like now?
Now, I would say I have a semi-healthy relationship. Definitely in comparison to when I first got social media, I'm much more in control. That's kind of the way that I put it. Definitely when it comes to TikTok and when I'm really tired or had a long day, I can't help myself sometimes, especially with the dopamine and everything. But when I first got social media, my relationship was completely different to how it is now. So I got Snapchat when I was 13 and I was late. Like, my entire friend group had it. And I was like begging my parents, like, oh, please, please, please. I got TikTok at 12 and I think I got Instagram at 12. And that was still late as well to like the people that I was around. And I mean, I think I've said this before, it wasn't really harmful. Like the first year or so I had it, I was just kind of watching dance videos, like kind of the beginning of lockdown, like late 2019, beginning of 2020. I was posting silly filters and that kind of thing, but it slowly progressed, and what I noticed happening is that kind of anything negative that would have been going on in my life was instantly taken onto social media and then perpetuated. So I had a bad day, my For You page was feeding me content of other people having bad days, kind of validating that, and I say a lot that it did create this kind of unhealthy community. But not a positive community, not in the way you think of community. It was like almost like a toxic one.
And how do you think the algorithm knew that you were having a bad day?
Well, I've noticed it now still. You know, you're not having a great day and then someone comes up on your For You page and they're talking about not having a great day. Oh, I'm going to like this. It's relatable. It's how I'm feeling. 2 scrolls later, it's the same thing. 3 scrolls later, it's someone having an even worse day than you and they have all these horrible things going on, and then all of a sudden you're feeling like, oh, maybe I shouldn't even be upset. I mean, it just takes a few likes. I was looking up how to do an exercise at the gym the other day, and I got home, and I was just on TikTok, and every like my entire For You page was just that exercise, gym this, gym that. It's so, just like really grabs onto anything that you look up, anything that you like. It's like constantly kind of following you like that. So that's kind of how it was keeping up with everything.
And what about being disciplined with social media? Arden, how do you find to sort of self-discipline around social media? Do you find that difficult?
Yeah, a little bit, especially when I'm tired. I'll just sort of be like, oh, I don't really want to do study or homework or whatever. I'm just going to go doom scroll for a little bit. But
Don't we all?
Yeah. But it is a challenge, and there's no sort of real incentive to put it down for a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing saying, oh, maybe you should have a step back from social media if it's not yourself being the one saying that. So I try to take a bit of time off social media, but I'm human, and you know, social media, whether you like it or not, it's very effective at getting people in. And so sometimes I'll be doom scrolling for what I think is 5 minutes, and then it's 40 minutes later. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you both mentioned, Olivia, you said you were sort of a bit older than a lot of your peers. And I think there's a stat now that the average age of people first starting TikTok in the US is 8 years old. What does that kind of make you think about the kind of content or that dopamine addiction you're talking about, the doom scrolling?
I mean, I just find it unfortunate because I've said this a lot and I've spoken to individual people about it, but the last thing you want is to be the one person not on social media. You know, you don't want to be isolated. You don't, you know, as a parent, obviously it's really difficult, but as a child, you don't want to be the odd one out. You don't want to be left out of hanging out with your friends, or everyone's talking about something and you just don't get the reference. That's the worst feeling as a child. And the fact that social media kind of encapsulates most people's social lives now, I think COVID had a big impact on that, because all of a sudden the only way to connect was online. But unfortunately, that's just kind of really taken off. And so I think, you know, these 8-year-olds and these like 9, 10-year-olds, this is their normal. They don't know, oh, Mom, can I go see so-and-so down the road? It's like, oh, I'll just FaceTime them. We can play Roblox together. I'll send them that TikTok.
And do you think parents have an understanding of what young people are seeing on social media?
I do think that people aren't necessarily aware of the promotion of mental health in a negative way, or the promotion of self-harm or the promotion of eating disorders. I don't think, or at least I know my parents didn't know that that content was even available, that there was such a thing as skinny talk. Or, you know, you can quite easily find ways to self-harm on TikTok or different ways to, you know, lose an appetite, right? And I don't think that parents, one, may even know that that's out there, or two, understand the actual impact of it. Because as a 35, 40-year-old grown adult, you see this content and you're like, you know, that's not a thing to me. I can watch it and that's fine. But as a 8-year-old or a 12-year-old, that's consuming, you know? And if you're seeing enough of it, you kind of take it on, which is what ended up happening at my school and with a lot of people I knew.
So can you elaborate a bit about that? So there was self-harm content that you saw online?
Yeah, I mean, in the friend group that I was in, we kind of all came together in a community of sorts to let ourselves be sad. I say a lot, you know, sometimes you just need to have a good cry. It was like that times 10. It was, you know, I'm really upset about this. No, I'm upset about this, you know, and it was in ways competitive. And that was just perpetuated by social media. So everything that would be going on in our lives, in person, at school, would then be put on social media. And we had like separate TikTok accounts from our main accounts where we would watch and post sad content. It's pretty easy to fall, as I said, you like a few videos. And the videos could range from anything. It could range from eating disorder inspo. You know, there was a lot of accounts of girls and boys who would say they're in recovery for certain things. You know, so you'd follow along watching that kind of thing. And then, you know, there was also how to take apart certain things to find objects to harm yourself. You know, and it's that easy to find that content. And when you're liking it and you're watching it and you're kind of taking it on, and you're 14 and you're confused about life and your friends are confused about life, that becomes so consuming, and that's what was happening.
Do you think that this sort of thing was isolated to your friend group? How common do you
I mean, my
feel
friend group was big. Being able to see all these accounts and seeing that they had hundreds of thousands of followers, hundreds and thousands of comments on each video, millions of likes, that means that there's millions of people that are consuming and watching the same content, which means there's probably millions of people that are experiencing the same thing I was.
Arden, that poses a really interesting thing about that normalisation of my online experiences like this. I just wondering if you could speak to on the sort of other minorities and how they're kind of portrayed in social media.
Yeah, look, for me, I get really passionate about this because I understand, being Māori and Pacifica, that there are a lot of challenges that our communities face around stereotypes. And social media, you know, is a place that seems to be, they try to say it's about connection and embracing and inclusivity. But actually, and especially on Instagram, my experience on Instagram, I've seen the opposite. I've seen the negative and, quite frankly, hateful portrayal of minority and vulnerable groups. And that's not only our Māori and our Pacifica, but that's our immigrant community, and that's our women. And what this means when you talk about destigmatization and normalization is that for young people, these ideas just, they don't become something that's taboo. They become, oh, that's a joke that I can make in the playground. You know, that's a comment that I can make because social media tells me that it's something that I should believe. For our young people who are still forming their opinions, this is a negative influence to them. And we heard, 8 years old, these 8-year-olds are getting onto TikTok and stuff like that. If you pair a young mind with these negative ideas, what you're going to get is you're going to get a whole bunch of worldviews influenced by social media, ones that divide us, and ones that really cast negative lights on some of our most vulnerable groups in this country.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with that. And I'm interested to hear your perspective as a young man on social media as well, because I think something that parents are really concerned about, parents of young boys, is this movement towards people like Andrew Tate and really misogynistic content online. Have you seen much of that in your experience? Do you think that is an issue?
Oh, I've seen it. I've seen it, definitely. And it goes back to that idea of destigmatization, like these ideas through, certain influences are becoming more and more mainstream, right? And so all of a sudden it's starting to become more and more okay to tell someone to go into a kitchen and make you a sandwich, that sort of stuff. And those sort of jokes, they start off as jokes, and then they turn into internalized ideas. And I think what that means is that, especially for our young men, there's no real... Because the way the algorithm works, especially for our young men, is that you just usually hear one side, and they always try to make it sound like it's us against them. And so what you actually see for a lot of young people online is that there's tribalism, where, okay, this is the group that you're in, so you're not in that group, and then it's an us versus them mentality, and it's really not okay.
That's true, isn't it? There seems to be a lot of putting people into different boxes and categorising them in a certain way so that you can then judge them, essentially.
Yeah.
It feels like there's a lot of that. Oh, crikey. Do you think some young people escape seeing this content? Have you heard of people only having a positive relationship with social media?
I think it'll be hard-pressed to find a person who says, all the content that I receive is positive. Mm-hmm. Everyone's going to receive negative content. And I think there's different, obviously, extents to which that happens. For some people, and, as we've heard, it might be quite a lot of really negative things. For some people, it may be one or two reels. But even still, that starts to get into the subconscious. And I think one other point that I do want to make, just around that stereotypes, in particular for our minority groups like Māori and Pacifica, is that, yes, it's our non-Māori and Pacifica who consume that and see that, this is how Māoris, and, this is what they are. And, we don't really like that. But actually for our Māori and Pacifica users as well, you begin to internalise an idea of, is this what I should be? Or is this what I am? Is this what I'm worth? And I'm really, really big on breaking down those stereotypes and moving forward. But you can't do that when this is the kind of content that people are being constantly bombarded with. And so I make quite a deliberate effort to try and say, you are more than what society places on you, the names or the labels that they place on you. Once you understand that you can do more than that, you have the key to the shackles. And you can do anything that you put your mind to.
I love that so much, because I guess it's really tricky for parents if your child is at school for however long, 6 or 7 hours a day, and then they're on social media outside of those hours, then you try your best as a parent to instill these good morals, good values, and these positive ideas, but then it's almost like the ideas that are coming from social media are going to outweigh them, because there's just by pure volume.
Yeah, as a paediatrician, I'm always fascinated by how us humans develop. I just wonder if you've got some thoughts on how different is it online and how people might struggle offline if they're used to that online world so much.
Yeah, well, we heard it earlier, I think, a little bit about those interpersonal relationships, and that social media almost becomes a barrier to being able to make meaningful interpersonal relationships with your peers. When you're constantly behind a screen, what you're making relationships with are brand names, with content creators, with genres of content, and you're not actually, putting the screen down and seeing what's right in front of you, which are people. There's a saying in te ao Māori, he te mea nui o te ao, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing in the world? It is the people, it is the people, it is the people. And so just from that aspect, social media don't do much to try and support those strong interpersonal relationships. And I think we see it a little bit now, even now with our younger kids coming into high school or finishing off their primary school education, that they find it harder to talk to people, that they find it harder to connect with people. For me, that's something really saddening, because growing up, I used to have a little biking club on my, we called it a biking club, on my street, and so all the neighbourhood kids would come down with their bikes and we'd go biking around, and I don't see a whole lot of that happening as much as I did when I was growing up.
Mm.
Yeah.
It almost feels like there's the illusion of human connection when you're on these apps. You feel like you're connecting with so many people because you have access to so many people, but it's not true connection. What do you think parents could be doing better? Let's start with you, Olivia.
I mean, at the end of the day, most of it is addiction. You know, as much as social media is harmful in, I mean, all of the ways we've been saying, there is a very, very, very real addiction. If you were to take my phone away right now, I'd be like, what do I do? I can't function, right? And so I think that there needs to be a substitute. You know, maybe it's instead of TikTok time when you get home from school, you're going to sit in the living room and you can watch any show you want. And it's not the quick scroll and the quick release of dopamine, but there's still something, because you can't kind of just sharply take that away. You need to almost segue it. It's complicated. It's so complicated. There's so many layers to it. And kids are complicated, and they're going to feel a lot of different things. And when there's addiction in the play of it all, I do think that a substitute is important as well.
I love that so much. It's almost like you need to be on your child's team, right? And figure out how you could work on it together and keep those lines of communication open. Yeah, that's really helpful. What about schools? What are your thoughts around media literacy in schools? Arden, what do you think? Do you think we need more education?
Yeah, look, let's be very clear. The landscape around social media and how kids are using devices has changed rapidly in the last, 10, 15 years. And so we've got to have an education system that adapts with that, you know what I mean? As kids become more familiar with using AI and using social media, they've got to understand the risks that come with it as well. And, there was a point mentioned earlier about building understanding. I've been doing a coaching course through Rowing New Zealand, and they talk about athlete-centered coaching, which means that it's not just me telling you, it's you understanding it, me understanding it, and us collaborating to improve. And so I think that needs to happen as well in the classroom, that, you meet the students where they are with making sure that they understand all the negative, all the positive, and all the precautions that they need to be able to take in a way that's not instructive but collaborative almost. Yeah.
If you both had a younger brother or sister, what age do you think would be appropriate to introduce social media to them?
For me, I think it's tough. I do have a little sister. So she got social media earlier than I did because, as you said, the age is just getting lower and lower and lower. I think it's difficult because I'm very big on the fact that I wouldn't want my child to feel out of the loop, coming home crying and upset because they're left out. But at the same time, knowing the risks and knowing the risks, are they even risks? Because 9 times out of 10 it's ending in harm. I feel like I would want probably 16, ideally, but if there's no legislation, if everyone else is on it, I would say between 13 and probably 15, and it would be monitored. And I think that, I would say to my child, listen, you can come and tell me if you see any range of content. I would probably sit down and have them listen or read with me why things are harmful, why it isn't okay. I would maybe share my own experiences. So kind of keeping that conversation open, making sure that they're comfortable to come and tell me if, I liked a few videos and now all I'm getting is really, really, sick-looking people and it's making me feel weird about myself or I'm feeling uncomfortable. Keeping that conversation open, saying it's okay, this is the algorithm, this is what happens, you can come and talk to me about it. But also being aware that keeping my child off it for too long would lead them in ways to feeling isolated, especially as they get older, especially entering high school. Especially, even now, I can hear in the younger classes, like, the vocabulary is so social media centered. Oh my goodness, I don't know what half of these words mean. And, I wanted to avoid that.
You don't know what they mean. Oh my gosh, we've got no idea.
No clue.
Yeah.
Okay, so it would be helpful if it was a collective thing, and so that it's not parents isolating their kids, do we think?
Well, I think for me, I've got a different. I've got mainly same perspective. My ideal age for my younger sibling, very protective, would be 25. But being realistic, it's probably going to have to be around 16, right? For me, in terms of that idea of isolation and having community, everybody needs community, right? Whether it's a lot of people find it online, but whether it's your church, whether it's your sports team, whether it's your school, whether it's your whānau or cultural group. And so what I would encourage for my younger sibling is, if you're looking for ways to not feel isolated, get involved in those kinds of groups and positive community. I've always been told in my family you've got to do a summer sport and a winter sport. And so while at St John's, it's been rugby and rowing. And I built great community there in that time. I've met a lot of great people who have taught me things, who have helped me develop as an athlete and as a person. And I've seen the positive effects of, firstly, those interpersonal relationships, but secondly, finding positive community. And I haven't needed social media as much when I'm, with our rowing team or our rugby squad, training and improving myself and helping improve my team. So positive community works. And I would encourage my younger sibling in that hypothetical to look to that first before you look to social media.
I love that. And you've grown up in the generation which just this year they limited cell phones in schools. So you've had a bit of a taste of that. I'd love to get some insights from kids and students how that's played out.
As a whole, it was positive in ways, because there was a few instances at school where kids were getting photos taken of them and posted on secret accounts, or there was even instances where teachers were getting photos taken of them in class and then posted with silly captions and mean captions and bullying. So I think that definitely helped, and I think obviously there was that kind of like rough patch where everyone was like, no, like I don't want this to happen. Obviously it's been long enough now. I do think it's positive as well, because it does keep me and my peers more connected to our learning.
Okay. What do you think, Arden?
This is actually quite a funny story. I used to be the student representative on the BOT before I became head boy.
What's the BOT, sorry?
Board of Trustees.
Right.
So for our at St John's College. And one of the requests I got from the students was like, after the phone ban had come in, firstly it was, can you make sure the phone ban doesn't come? I'm like, well, I'm on the BOT, but I'm not in Parliament, so can't help you that much. And then the second request was, after the phone ban had come in, hey, my phone's not connecting to mobile data in the toilets. Can you fix it, please? One of the points that was made was, this is going to help kids talk to each other. But during the break times, we're seeing people going from phones to laptops.
Right.
And so that sort of mitigates the effect that it's having. And so at St John's, we've tried to bring in a device-free Wednesday, which is every Wednesday, if you're not doing study on your laptop, then we're going to ask you to turn it off. And what we've seen is positive student engagement. All our sports equipment's being taken out of the gym. And so that's something that we're trying to do to help fight that. But it is true. Students still manage to find ways around everything. And the phone ban's no different. But I will say I think it is a positive step, because it does limit, I guess, the amount of phone usage, even though it doesn't fully tamp it out. It does definitely tamp it down.
We can reduce it,
yeah,
which is a positive. I'm really interested to know whether you have heard about instances of sextortion, basically where someone approaches you online and they look like a young, attractive person a similar age to you. They start engaging in a conversation. Next thing, they're asking for pictures, and then someone sends those pictures. They're then screenshotted and they're used to bribe the person to get money out of them. So this is becoming more and more common. And there are these scam complexes in different countries in the world that are targeting young people, not just young people, but basically vulnerable people online to try and get money out of them. Have you guys heard of any instances of that going on in your peer groups?
I do know of people that have had situations, not where people are necessarily pretending that there's someone else, but they have ended up in, unhealthy relationships where that kind of thing happens, They're told after a breakup that they need to send $50 or this photo is going to be posted on Instagram, that kind of thing, which is unfortunate because with social media, it's just so easy. Everyone can see everything like that. Snapchat, you could have thousands of people added and you post something on your main story. You have 100 viewers within 10 seconds. I haven't personally heard of anyone pretending to be someone else and doing that. I have had instances myself where I've accepted an account thinking it was a friend. Not the friend, just an absolute fake account on Instagram. Literally the other day, a girl in my class was like, can you report this account? They're pretending to be me and they're posting photos that aren't me, but are like AI generated, which is just a whole other concerning factor. Scary in a lot of ways. But not specifically that, but in ways, things that are similar.
Right. How about you, Arden?
Yeah, look, again, not to me personally. Obviously, I've got those bot accounts that add you and try to say hello. This is my name, but it's pretty easy for me to read. You know what I mean? Maybe for younger people, it might be a bit more difficult. But what I have seen is, and you would have heard the term leaks, where essentially, and it's happened at St John's, and I've talked to my younger cousins who are an intermediate, and it's happening there as well, where platforms such as Instagram and Snapchat are being utilised to catfish, essentially, and lure young people into sending inappropriate photos, and then those inappropriate photos get shared among their peers. And what that does is it perpetuates bullying, firstly. Firstly, that instance of just luring those people in to get those photos is bullying. But then once they get shared around the entire school, I mean, I know of a person at a school who locked themselves in the bathroom and was, saying that they're going to do all this sort of stuff. And I've seen cases where people have had videos or photos leaked of them and they get bullied and they have to be put into a different part of a class or something, or have a teacher watch over them. And then our counsellors as well. I mean, I believe there's been an uptick of the amount of students going to counsellors for social media related problems, and it all feeds back to things like this. So it's an unsafe platform for our young people, and that's just one example of how it is. And it's really saddening for me because, this shouldn't be something that's happening, and yet it is.
And I think we should put ourselves in the shoes of a 13, 14, 15-year-old. Because, I mean, now, if that happened to me, I would think, this really sucks, but we're going to get through it, right? But the need at 13, 14, 15 especially to be a part of the group, and if you thought that some inappropriate photos or content or whatever of you was going to be shared all through your peers, sent to your family, that would be terrifying, absolutely terrifying.
And for you might be doing interviews for things like jobs and things like that. How do you think that affects someone's confidence or anxiety levels about this kind of digital kind of footprint of you?
I mean, I think it's difficult because, at 13 and 14, you kind of lack the consequences. It's difficult to think of the consequences of stuff, so it's quite easy to get wrapped up in things. But I think in the same breath, a 13-year-old shouldn't need to be thinking about those kinds of consequences. And I think, if I've posted embarrassing videos and stuff, but not like anything that would be affecting a job in the future. I feel like, I know students that were pulled out of school, were homeschooled because they had instances of getting leaked. And what that does to your confidence I can't imagine it because I haven't experienced it, but it would be awful. I mean, yeah, I know multiple people that are homeschooled now or that have had to move schools because, it's almost like when, an instance like that where someone gets leaked, or maybe not leaked, there's just really awful photos of them. The bullying from other students is so intense.
Yeah. And I guess it doesn't stop at school, does it? It's not. It's a round the clock thing when you add social media into the mix.
And do you think school counsellors or professionals who would traditionally handle bullying, do they have the skills, do you think, or the awareness of what this new kind of bullying is all about?
No, I wouldn't say that they have the... I mean, I love our counsellors. I think they do an incredible job. But social media, the environment, and just the environment that our students are growing up in is constantly changing and evolving. And I don't see that there's, I think, the proper training and equipment required for them to be able to deal with it effectively. And so it's not the fault of our counsellors, it's the fault that there's not those protocols or those methods in place to be able to support students effectively.
I agree. It's really difficult to keep up with how quickly it changes. As a parent or a health professional, we just don't know. It just constantly seems to evolve, and then we're trying to keep up with these big tech platforms, and we're also trying to keep up with these professional scammers. You know, it feels like a real uphill battle. There's a lot of people who say that child rights is a key reason why we should give children access to social media, that they have the right to be online, that they have the right to have their voice heard on a platform like Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. What do you have anything to say about that?
I think that if Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook didn't have the kind of content and the accessibility to that content, then yes. You know, if you're 13 and you're really into politics and debating, you should be able to watch politics and debating. Maybe you want to, you know, learn about someone that's not necessarily all over Google. They don't have a Wikipedia page, but your teacher was talking about them and they're online. And that kind of content isn't necessarily or inherently harmful, but it's everything else that comes with it. So, yes, a 13, 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 12-year-old should, in ways, be allowed to see and watch content. But to what extent can that content be, in a way? Mm-hmm. You know, it's not a lot of the time helpful content. I know my For You page and the stuff I'm consuming isn't necessarily productive content. A lot of the time it's people talking about their lives or doing a haul about this or a makeup tutorial. It's not necessarily harmful in that sense, but it isn't productive. If social media was productive and, you know, maybe it was just about school or different ways to do certain things or different ways to fix this, or, you know, when YouTube was pretty much makeup tutorials and prank videos. But now that there's an influx in that kind of eating disorder inspo, self-harm inspo, you know, sad inspo, that kind of thing, I just think that doesn't necessarily apply. Mm-hmm.
Look, you've got to be very clear to the extent of the damage that's occurring on social media, right? No child has a right to see self-harm content. No child has a right to be exposed to people in like car crashes, people hurting themselves, people telling people to go kill themselves, right? Mm. Nobody has a right to see that. And frankly, I mean, I understand the importance of allowing children to have their own autonomy in a sense. You know, that's part of developing. But we've got to be very clear on the harmful nature that social media currently has. And if we're going to talk about child rights, we've got to be able to have clear, common sense regulation coming from the big tech firms to say, we're not going to show you any of this, we're going to show you age-appropriate content. And currently, as it stands, that's not happening. We've got an algorithm that's frankly targeting children and targeting our minority groups and our vulnerable groups, and it's having worse off outcomes for these groups. And I think the other point as well is, you know, you talked about politics, a 14-year-old, 15-year-old interested in politics. There's a whole bunch of misinformation online, and it's getting worse, AI deepfakes, all the rest of it. And we're moving further and further away from traditional media sources which have those fact-checking sort of safeguards to make sure that the content that they're putting out is credible. Online, you can say anything, and it becomes gospel for people. And we talked earlier about stereotypes. We talked earlier about the degrading and negative content toward women, toward minority groups. And when you start to dip your toes into politics online, it just becomes a cesspool of negative and hateful and frankly disgusting content some of the time. And so we talk about child rights. We've got to talk about child protection at the same time.
Couldn't agree more, Arden. Couldn't agree more.
It's great, and I feel I have to chip in on the child rights thing. I think what you're sort of saying is, but children have a right to a childhood, and maybe we've replaced something there with this online sort of beast.
Well, before we finish up, are there any final words? Is there something that you really wish parents and lawmakers would understand about young people using social media? Anything that we haven't covered?
I mean, for me, I would say have a look at what your child's watching. You'd be surprised. I know that when I was 14, my parents would have been shocked if they had seen the content I was viewing. You can go on TikTok and you can look at someone's favorited folders where it's the videos that they like so much they're popping it in a folder. Go have a look at that and see. I feel like a lot of the time parents think, well, my child's fine. My child goes to school. Their attendance is great. They have a good group of friends. You know, it's quite easy to kind of keep that up and have, in ways, you know, a toxic community on social media. So my suggestion is have a look at that. If it's fine, then have the conversation. Never mind what they're watching. Just have the conversation anyway. Social media can turn like that. It takes a few likes. It takes a few searches. It takes one bad day and watching a few sad TikToks to end up in that spiral. And I think that it's really important that parents recognize that.
I think there's a sentiment out there that you see from parents where it's like, that won't happen to my child. That's a terrible thing that's happening to those people over there, but it's not going to happen to me. And so I think the first thing I would want people to take away from this, whether you're an auntie, an uncle, a parent, a brother or a sister, is no one's immune, right? There are very real dangers and there are very real temptations for people, and it's understanding that no one is immune to it. And then secondly, it's building understanding. So you've got to come from a place of love, and you've got to come from a place that's, as I mentioned earlier, collaborative and not instructive, because frankly people want what they can't have, you know what I mean? And so if you're just constantly going like this, as we heard earlier, then they're going to find other ways to get around it. So you've got to approach it with love. You've got to make sure that your child understands, or your younger brother or younger sister understands why you're doing what you're doing, and just watch out for them. I know that everyone gets very busy and it's very hard to juggle all the different things going on in life, but look out for your kids, look out for your younger siblings, and if you don't have necessarily the time to always do that, make sure someone is. And just to our rangatahi, stay safe. Stay safe. You are more than what social media says you are. You are more than what the stereotypes that society puts on you. You steer your own waka. You're the one who determines your fate, not those negative stereotypes, not those negative commentaries, and that we need to embrace people, right? We talked about that hateful content, making sure that we understand we're all human. We're all equal, we're all capable and willing to love, and we all feel the same things. And so understanding that all these jokes that are made online, they actually hurt people. So just be aware, stay safe, stay, as one person, I think over in the States puts it, stay connected, protected and respected.
Oh, I love it.
That's the way I like to put it.
Yeah. And we're recording this actually just before Father's Day, and you mentioned some of the social media vocab. Is there any ton of terms for the dads who might be listening to throw in with their kids that they might go, whoa, that was pretty cool?
I don't understand half what the Year 9 say, so it's a bit hard for me.
Second that, I'm not too sure.
Maybe a bit of Riz.
Yeah, a bit of Riz.
Riz.
Riz, Slay.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for being with us today on the podcast. I mean, at 17, talking about these topics, this is heavy stuff. And I think it will be so helpful for so many people hearing your perspective. So thank you so much for being part of it. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
No, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to One Young Mind. We're on a mission to understand what our tamariki are experiencing online, to listen, connect, and make sense of this challenging topic, bringing the conversation to the forefront. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe so you never miss an episode, and share it with someone who cares about the well-being of young people.
We'd also like to thank everyone who makes this podcast possible. We simply couldn't do it without you. Executive producers Flicker Williams and Julie Clothier, editor Luke Johnson, Omzi for our branding and design, and the recording team at PodLab, and our commercial partners 2 Degrees and iHeartRadio and the team at Before 16. Thanks for listening. Ka kite anō.